Hi folks, my name is Ron Irwin. I'm a former Detective Sergeant in the Victoria Police and I'm the author of this book. I call it Blackened Tanner. It's the story of Dennis Tanner, a former Victorian Police Detective Sergeant. It's a book I've written about him. I certainly haven't written it for him, but he's been accused very publicly. It's one of the biggest media cases ever, I think, in the state of Victoria, and he's been accused of causing the death of his sister-in-law, Jennifer Tanner, and of a prostitute who's a transvestite prostitute, Adele Bailey, whose remains were found in a mine about 25 kilometres from his former family farm. My involvement in it really came about quite accidentally. A customer of mine had passed me some information regarding Jennifer Tanner. She was frightened of the media, asked me would I pass it on to the task force. I did that. Eventually the task force came to see me. I relayed that information to them and some other comments that I'd heard at a local football match about the death of Adele Bailey. Then they asked me did I know a detective from Mildura by the name of McHugh, Jerry McHugh. I did know McHugh. I'd been his boss in Dandenong in Melbourne back in the 70s. They said that he'd been ringing Tanner at the Benalla Bowling Club, and they asked me would I go there for them and make some inquiries now to see who he was ringing. I said that I thought he'd be ringing the local manager of the club, who was a native of Mildura, and I suggested that they were probably just old mates ringing each other. I told them I didn't even think McHugh and Tanner would ever know each other. That, of course, has proved to be the truth, but I went and made the inquiries for them. The manager told me that McHugh had been ringing him. I passed that message on to the task force and forgot about it. 2 years later, the task force came to see me and asked me if I would refuse to talk to the Ombudsman about a complaint that had been made about them by McHugh. When the Ombudsman rang me, he told me, he read from their notes, and where they'd claimed, and they were fictitious notes of course, but they notes that claimed that I had told them that McHugh, 4 other detectives including Tanner, had regularly had parties at Bonnie Doon with transvestites and prostitutes, sex parties. Now I'd never said anything remotely like that. I told the Ombudsman that and he expected he'd do something about it. When he hadn't taken a statement from me a month later, I went to see him to clear the air. I said, I'm not going to wear this. So I expected that he would carry out an investigation, but he didn't. McHugh approached me 12 months later. He said that the Ombudsman had finished his report and that he showed me the report. And I was virtually accused that I probably had backflipped. Now, I hadn't backflipped on anybody, and I studied the Ombudsman report and found out that he'd not even taken account of the fact that a month after I had passed this message, spoken to the task force, that the Adele Bailey inquest took place, and no one ever asked me to give evidence about this wonderful material that I was supposed to have passed on. So it's a very poor Ombudsman investigation. It caused me to ask Dennis Tanner, could I have the transcripts and the brief of evidence and so forth in relation to the deaths that he'd been accused of. Now, I studied those. I immediately found that Jennifer Tanner had obviously committed suicide. There was no way anyone could ever dispute that, I believed, and so I found that all of the conversations that the witnesses of in relation to her death had all been tape recorded way back in 1984 when she died. They'd never been transcribed for the inquests, and so I transcribed them and found that started me off on a crusade to say, well, if someone's got to listen to this, this lady's committed suicide, and Adele Bailey's death had the person that owned the site where the mine was also owned the Tynong North murder site, so there was 5 bodies found on the 2 separate properties belonging to that individual. So I knew a lot about the Tynong North murders for the simple reason, and the landowner, the simple reason that I'd grown up in that district of Tynong North before I joined the police. Now, I attempted to draw to attention to the authorities just what had happened here, that this was a horrible miscarriage of justice in respect to Dennis Tanner, and nobody would listen. 10 years later, I'm still sitting there languishing. I took some Supreme Court action to comply with the law and try and have these inquests reviewed. The government changed the law to stop me, and that's caused me very significant financial hardship and stopped the public becoming aware of what's going on. Now, I lodged a new application with the new coroner 3 years ago now, and almost 3 years ago, and still nothing is happening in relation to that. It's just not being addressed, or everybody's hoping that I'm just going to go away. So I've written this book. It's an eye-opener for people who follow these cases. It's described by, in the foreword you'll see, as probably the best expose you'll ever want to see of a miscarriage of justice. I know it's a good book, and I do it to correct the imbalance in the public record, the public information that's been available. People hate Dennis Tanner, and a lot of them will probably never ever believe that he is totally innocent in all of these cases. But my summation, analysis, reconciliation of the evidence is supported by 4 former heads of the homicide squad, by quite a number of international experts, and forensic pathologists. Now, I haven't done this lightly, but I do it because the public deserve to know the truth. I'll promote the book extensively and be available for speaking engagements where anyone wants me to describe what I talk about in the book with a PowerPoint presentation. But it's a book that will, I think, shock the nation. Many people who've read it, this manuscript, tell me that it's a book that will make an enormous difference. I hope it does, because there is something very seriously wrong with the justice system in Victoria when for 10 years somebody comes along, these are deaths that they offered $2 million in reward for. I come along and say, well, hold on, one of them wasn't a murder in the first place, and the other one, there are multiple suspects that ought to also have been considered, as well as the information they passed off about Dennis Tanner. Now, they don't want to talk to me. They changed the law to stop me. But if someone else came along and said, if I came along even, and said Dennis Tanner was guilty, they'd pay me $10 million. Now, there's something very wrong with the system when that happens. That government interference can occur in something like this when you have laws of the land that allow people like me to go along and say to the Supreme Court judges of this state, this is the truth about what happened, and they wipe me out with a change of legislation. This book will put a change to that. It's, I'm sure, an enormous eye-opener, and I'm sure, as those who critique the book tell me, that it will make an enormous difference.